Herman F. Naville.
Spell it, please.
Oh, Herman. F is in
Frank.
Frank. Naville. Naville.
Naville. That's how you pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
When you were born?
1930.
Do you have a birthday?
July the 23rd, 1930.
23rd, 1930.
1930.
And where are you born?
Floyd Snobs, Indiana.
Indiana. Please tell me about your family when you were growing up. Parents and your siblings?
We lived in the country on a small farm. We had a few milk cattle and some hogs and chickens, and just raised like strawberries and soybeans and corn. And my mother was a school teacher until they had children, and then she didn't teach anymore until after the youngest one got in school. And then she taught till she was about 70.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
They were 5 of us, 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
And you are the eldest?
I'm the middle.
Middle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What school did you go through?
A little country one-room school, all 8 grades. It was
One-room school.
about
Many?
30 students in the whole school.
That's it?
Yes,
And many different grades?
all 8.
So, how many teachers then?
1.
Only one teacher taught 30 students in 8 different grades?
Right. They would have a period. I mean, during the 1 hour period, while they would teach, like the first grade, maybe 15 minutes or something like that. Then they would go to the next grade, and each one they would have a certain amount of time that they would use, and then you go to the next grade.
How did it work?
It worked fine.
Amazing.
Yes, yes.
So when did you graduate high school?
I didn't go to high school.
Oh,
My dad became sick, and we had the farm to take care of, so I quit school and milked the cows and things like that.
so you were a young farmer.
Yeah, yes.
Then when did you join the military?
In 1949, January the 10th, 1949.
Uh-huh. You enlist or
Yes.
for what, Army?
Army, yes.
And tell me about your basic military training. Where did you receive it and what kind?
At Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, and it was airborne training.
Airborne?
Well, it was 101st Airborne,
101st?
yes. But it was infantry training. And then after the 16 or 12 weeks or whatever it was, then you had the opportunity to go on to the 101st Airborne. But I went into 24th Infantry. They assigned me to the 24th Infantry Division, and I was sent to Japan.
Do you remember when you left for Japan?
About the middle of April of 1949.
Before we go into the details of your service in Japan, did you know anything about Korea at the time?
No, no. I know the first I knew about it is when they took the troops out of South Korea,
1949.
1949, and some of the guys that was over there was transferred to our company, and that was the first I heard of it.
You first heard about Korea
Right,
from them.
right.
Didn't your grade school teacher?
We had geography, and but I didn't care too much about school. So
to be honest with us.
yes, so I didn't. I was more interested in playing or whatever, other than. But No, I never heard of course, there's a lot of countries I'd never heard of by that time either.
Why did you enlist the army? What
I-
motivates you to do that?
I was looking for a good time.
In the military?
Well, yes, pretty women and different things.
Pretty woman, that's very important, yes. So tell me about your life in Japan. Where did you go? What did you do there?
I was in the 19th Infantry Regiment of the 24th Division,
19th.
Infantry Regiment.
Uh-huh.
I was in Charlie Company of the 1st Battalion,
Uh-huh.
and we just took training after they'd have a course for a few weeks, and then they would have maybe a week or two in between, and then you'd take a refresher course, and that's what we did all the while. And we was up at Yokohama whenever the war broke out there, the 25th of June. We was on amphibious maneuvers. We was taking that training.
Ah. And tell me about how much you were paid in Japan. What was your rank?
I was a PFC,
PFC.
and I guess the pay was probably $85 or $90 a month.
That's not too bad, right?
Well, no, it was fine.
What did you do with that money?
Spent it.
For what?
Oh, cigarettes and women and whatever.
Oh, you had a good time there.
I had a good time, yeah.
I see. But had you ever imagined that you would be dragged into the war, into a country you never knew before?
No, no. We had training on, like for prisoners of war, but you thought, well, it just didn't sink in.
Mm-hmm.
But what they told us, really wasn't like they say, you give your name, rank, and serial number, and that's all you have to tell them. Well, if you want to get your head knocked off. But being as I was a farm boy, I knew that they kind of liked the poor class of people, so I just used that and told them, that I didn't have a chance to go to school and I like playing basketball or sports. So I just, I told them I milked cows and took care of pigs and stuff, so they never bothered me that much to question me, when they interrogated me.
What were you thinking when you first heard of Korean War broke out?
It scared me because they confined us to the barracks, and so we didn't really know what was going on, but it was just scary because of the alert. They put us on alert, and so then they sent us back to our camp down in Beppu, Japan.
Beppu, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did they brief you about Korea, culture, people, language, location, geography, whatever?
No, nothing.
Do you think that you were trained enough to deal with the battle there?
Well, that's all we did was train. Some of the companies in Japan or bases, they talked like they didn't train them any. I mean, that, they was more under-trained, but that's all we did. One refresher course after the other one, like firing different weapons and all kind of maneuvers. And so with bayonet training and all.
Mm-hmm. Did you write back to your family that you're going to go to Korea?
Yeah,
You did?
I did.
Tell me, when did you leave for Korea from Japan?
I think I landed in Korea on the 4th of July.
Wow, Independence Day, 1950.
Right,
Where? Busan?
yes.
Tell me about the Busan you first saw. What did you see?
Put us on like a school compound, I think, like maybe a parade field or a play field, whatever it was, and it was having like a monsoon rain that night, and it was kind of I don't know what you call it, but they was little kids come up to the fence, and they say, "Wait till the North Koreans get a hold of you." And so, well, that didn't sound good. Here they was down there in the South, you know, and hoping that the North Koreans would wipe us out.
Yeah.
Some of the kids there that came up to the fence, or younger ones.
What did you hear about the situations in the front line, Busan perimeter? Was it desperate or how was it? Did you hear anything about what's going on in the front line?
Well, when we got up to Taejon, there were some that had, like, I don't know whether it was Task Force Smith or the ones at the first ones, there was a few stragglers coming through, and they said, man, it's suicide up there, you know. So,
Wow.
but we didn't have a choice. So they hauled us up to the Coom River there on trucks, and we were there.
Oh, so you went to Coom River?
The Coom River's where we got wiped out.
Wow. How many were you there
Well,
from your regiment?
I think they were about 4 companies.
4 companies, so we're talking about 400?
Well, 180 men in the company.
Oh, okay, so
About, what, 4?
800.
Yeah, close to 800.
Yeah.
But they were so scattered out that there was openings in between one company and another one, so the enemy could come through without, without being detected. And another thing, there was a lot of refugees fleeing south,
Right.
and I saw some film on it that was actual film during that time, and they might be 75 men in white clothes, and with no women in, you know, and so they were probably North Koreans in civilian clothes because they come in from behind us.
So it must be very dangerous. You don't know who the real enemy is.
Right, right.
You said wiped out. How many men were killed there?
Well, there was one of the officers that made it out, and he told me there was 16 out of our company made it out.
1,600?
No, 16 men made it out of the 180.
Out of 800?
Out of our, no, they 180 out of our company.
Out your company?
Yes.
Wow.
My company commander got killed. Well, they took him prisoner on the 16th, and I didn't get captured till the 17th. I got the company commander to give us an order to withdraw towards the north, and they
North?
yes, because they were coming in from behind us. They were just off of the mountain there, and there was about maybe 25 of us that got over to the river there, and we went down, and we didn't. The leader of the highest ranking was a sergeant, and he didn't have too much brightness about him, I don't think, because he led us right back up from where the enemy was coming instead of trying to go, you know, off to the one side or the other, east or west, and get around them. And we got run into an ambush, and then we got back out of that, and there was about maybe 12 of us. So we found a place on the hillside. We was going to just lay there till dark, but then try to move at dark. Well, there was an explosion that got me. We was laying there, and we was just resting, and all of a sudden I heard a hollering, and I looked up, and there was a North Korean about, I don't know, maybe 50 yards from me. And that was the last I remember. There was an explosion, and I felt my head land on my arm, but I could still think for a few seconds. The blood was gushing out of my head. Every heartbeat of it squirting out. And I thought, well, I knew I was dead, so I asked God for forgiveness, you know, and maybe He's received me in His kingdom, because I was brought up as a Catholic. Yes, I was a Christian. And so later on when I woke up, I said, well, I'm not dead yet. So I was in and out of it all through the night. I found myself walking around on the hillside hollering for the battalion aid station. And then so I would crawl back in the bushes there, and I thought, well, I had to find a place to hide, and there was a rice paddy on the other side of the road. I was going to try to get to that. Well, when I got in this trench to go around to get it, well, I saw 3 silhouettes coming back across the field. Well, so anyway, about that time, when I started in the trench, well, I hear coming North Korean, so I just rolled over the side, and he went up from where I just come from. So I went on around the hill there, and I got in this creek bed, and there was a convoy of the North Koreans crossing the bridge. So I was leaning up against the bank. It was about as high as the ceiling. And in a little bit here, them 3 officers had a pistol pointed down at me in that creek bed, and they took I had a hand grenade left. It was in my pocket, but that was all I had. But I was covered with blood. I had a place taken out of the top of my head, my ear, and I was blind in one eye, splintered collarbone. And so here I was just like in an ant's nest. The enemy was all over. They had their headquarters right up about 75 feet from where I just come from.
So that's a July 17th?
Yes.
That's when you were captured?
That's when I was captured. And they turned me over. They was, like I said, the enemy was all over the place. They turned me over to some other ones, and that one guard put his rifle up to my head, and he said, "You die," or what was it? Sendai, is that die?
Senda?
In Japan, in Japanese, is that Sendai? Whatever it was. And so I just looked at him, and then they took me back up on top of the hill there where I just come from, and they had 5 or 6 out of my company. And so they took our shoes and our dog tags, and maybe about noon, while they brought us some food, and they said they was going to shoot us at sundown. Sundown, they made us lay face down in that trench, and I don't know whether another officer took over or what, but then he stopped them, and so they started marching us. And one of the guys was shot through the foot, so 2 of them was helping him, and we got about 100 yards, and they shot him. And then they marched us through the night, and then they grouped us up with about 25. They kept us there that day, and the next night they moved us. We waded the river on sandbags, and they said if anybody escapes, they's going to shoot the rest of them. Well, when we was crossing the river, I got my hands out of the things, but I couldn't do it if they was going to shoot the rest of them, so I slipped them back in.
How was the treatment from North Korean soldiers? How did they treat you and other POWs?
They were about as mean as they could be.
Example?
Well, if you barely got out of line or something, they would hit you with a rifle butt, and even I saw them do their own. They was kind of a handicapped boy along the road there. He probably 16, and he was kind of bagging, and the guard hit him with his rifle, and but we was starving and thirsty. And later on, they took us up the Mampole. Well, you know, they kept us in a fire station someplace about the second day, and then they moved us to a little farther up, and we went to Sewell. We stayed there for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or something, and then on to Pyongyang, and they kept us there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they put us on trains and took us up to Mampole. And that was a fairly decent camp where they had us there, but then the Chinese come in, and they moved us out of there, and they was trying to keep us from getting liberated. And we slept out on the ground, and it was like it was around the 20th of October there, whenever the Chinese come in up there, because they marched us right through them, and they would just, hundreds of them.
And where did you go from Mampole to?
We went kind of west for maybe 20, 25 miles, and then they kept us one night, and then they moved us back over the mountain and kept us there for a day, and then they moved us back up towards Mampo. Right outside of Mampo, I don't know, maybe the 27th of
July?
October.
October, yeah.
And we slept in a cornfield. And then 31st, that's when the tiger took over. And then they had moved us out that night over, and they was going to shoot us. They had machine guns set up, and they had us up against this cliff or something. Because there was some missionaries there that could understand, and the one was crying, and she said she spoke French, and my buddy was a French, and he said that this missionary said they're going to shoot us. Well, they didn't, and anyway, we slept there overnight, and then the next morning is when we started the death march. And then that same day, they said the tiger said nobody would fall out. Well, they had us in groups of about 50, an officer in charge of each group. And so we started out, we wasn't much more than an hour away, and the guard made these guys that was helping another guy, put him to the side. Well, when the tiger found out, he stopped the whole column. And he called the officers up and was in charge, and he was going to shoot them all. And at that particular time, I was closest from here to that wall. There was a mound there on the edge of the road, and that he had them about 4 officers up there, I think. I know Major Dunn, Lieutenant Stavrix, and Lieutenant Thornton, and then Commissioner Lord. He was the interpreter, and he was going to shoot him for disobeying his order. Well, Commissioner Lord was trying to talk him out of it, that the guard made him do it, but he wouldn't hear to it. So he was about to shoot him, and so he said he'd just shoot one of them. So Lieutenant Thornton said, well, in America, we have a trial. Well, so he said, well, we'll have a trial. He hollered out, that for disobeying command of treason or whatever he called it. So they all hollered, kill him, So he had that little towel that we had, and he just put it around his eyes, pushed his cap forward. Or no, maybe he didn't put the towel around his eyes. He just pushed his cap forward and put his pistol up to the back of his head and shot him.
Right there?
Right there.
The tiger?
The tiger shot this Lieutenant Thornton, yeah.
What were you thinking when you saw that?
I closed my eyes when he shot him. I didn't need that to live with. So I think the God had a lot to do with my survival. He gave me a peace that I could just have a blank mind and do whatever, if he said get up, get up. But so then after that we started out, and we was like between a fast walk and a run.
Lieutenant was the only one who was shot?
He was the only one that was shot right there.
And rest of them survived?
Yes.
And then where did you go from there?
We marched for 9 days up towards what I forgot. He was marching us so fast because he was afraid there's a pass get closed with the snow. And but we slept out on the ground, and it was freezing weather, and even snow on the ground some then. But they averaged. We lost about 100 men in the 9 days, and I think they shot about 80 of them. And even some of the missionaries he shot. That was there, teachers in school. But we lived in filth all the time. We never took a bath or anything. Most of the time we eat with our fingers if they got a corn ball or rice ball or millet ball.
How many times a day?
Well, we was lucky if we got one on the march. Well, before, when we was sleeping in the cornfield, we didn't even get a rice ball. We got a bowl of hot water that's supposed to have been some Chinese cabbage in it, but you didn't even, for that many men, you didn't even see a leaf in it. It was just broth, but at least it was some liquid. And there was some corn stalks there, and I even broke a corn stalk apart and took the inside out of it just for moisture.
Were you still praying to God at the time?
Pardon?
Were you still praying to God?
I never begged for my life. I just accept, whatever coming. I mean, but if he took me, whatever. I wasn't frightened. I wasn't afraid to die. But so I know my parents did, and a lot of people back home were praying for me. And but the training helped you prepare to die too. I mean, like before all that, there.
Did you regret?
No, never. I mean, I did some then because I never thought we'd ever get out. I didn't know, if they did prisoner exchange or anything. You just lived, and as long as you didn't give up, you had a chance to survive. I asked for it. I mean, when I enlisted in the military, but I really wasn't smart enough. Well, most of them, I guess, wasn't, that really knew what was involved in it.
So then, did you check into any camp later?
Yeah, if they moved us up, I think they called it the Apex camp or something. Yeah.
Oh, tell me about it.
And that first winter,
when did you arrive at Apex camp? Apex.
Well, it was, we stopped at the end of the 9 days and spent maybe 1 or 2 days at was it Chungjong or something like that, and then they moved us on up to this other village. So there was a schoolhouse there where they kept part of them, and I was in a mud hut, which was a blessing because they had heat under the floor. I mean, the farmers still come and put heat in, or built the fire, and so we had at least a warm floor to sleep on, and we'd get a rice ball before daylight and one before right after dark. Mm-hmm. When somebody would die, they would take their clothes off of them and lay them outside, and whenever we'd bury them, it was just like you put them across one of the poles or whatever you call them, between, two guys that carry on their shoulder, put the bodies across them and carry them up on the hill. Either if the guard would make you cover them over with snow, stick them in an empty foxhole. One time we put 4 in a foxhole, and a leg wouldn't go over, and the guard gave one of the guys an axe, made him cut his leg off, and then put brush over it. But and we had lice.
Lice.
Oh, it was like hog lice. They were big. We used to go through our clothes and mash the eggs, go through our hair, pop the lice.
Tell me about the Apex camp. Was it kind of village, or
yeah, it was just a small village.
Small village.
Yes.
And was there any barbed wire around it?
No.
It's just plain.
But we could look into Manchuria from that camp.
Oh.
And across the river there, the Yellow River, there was some people in white clothing that set up like it was some kind of some sort of a building up there where there were quite a few men in white that would set out sometime.
When did you arrive at Apex? 15?
Probably the 9th, 10th, about the 11th or 12th, something like that.
Of?
November.
Of 1950?
Yes.
How many people were in a room?
Well, you had to lay with your feet connected, or when everybody had to lay on the same side.
Uh-huh.
So it was about maybe a 8 by 10 room or something. There's probably 20 of us. Or.
What do you mean? 20 people in a room?
Mm-hmm.
20? How large was the room?
About a 8 by 10.
No. Each room, how many?
Well, there was only 2 rooms.
Only 2 rooms?
Mm-hmm.
And how many were there? 80?
No, it had been like 40. Let's see that. Well, I know however many would lay on your side, and then during the day, some would have to sit out in the middle because there wasn't room enough to sit along the wall. So that would have been. maybe it was just 12 or 14, I don't know, but it was enough that we didn't have room to lay flat out.
So 12 people, prisoner of war in a room,
Right,
and you have only 2 rooms.
right.
So that means you were not more than 30 people.
Well, but they had the schoolhouse
Uh-huh.
where they kept, the majority of them was in a schoolhouse.
Oh, okay.
And they were a few of us in 3 huts, I think.
But why do you call it Apex rather than, I mean, all other
I don't know
camp is
that.
Camp 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, that was before we were turned over to the Chinese.
So that was still under the North Korean control?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And after you turned over to Chinese, what happened to the Apex?
Well, they took us.
Oh, the Chinese took over the Apex.
No, they took us down the Yellow River on these here boats that, got the thing paddle out the back.
Yeah.
Okay, they took us in end of October 1951.
Uh-huh.
But in the spring of 1951, they moved us out of the Apex camp down about 25 or 30 mile west.
West, yes.
And we spent there until October that the 51.
Uh-huh.
And then that's when they took us. They was some kind of a communist official came in, and our major that was in charge, Major Dunn, told him that if they didn't get rid of the tiger, we were all going to be dead, and it wouldn't look good for the propaganda.
Right.
So it was shortly after that that they moved us out, took us down the river by the boats, and that's when we went down to Camp 5 or
Pyeongdong?
yeah,
Okay. So when was it? 19?
about around the 1st of November 1951.
51. So you were actually happy that you are getting out of APEC and out of Tiger.
Oh, yeah, but I was about dead. We had dysentery. I weighed 225 when I was captured, and I was in perfect condition. I carried a BAR, and we trained up in the mountains and stuff. And there was a platform scales there that right before we turned over to Chinese, and I got on it, and I weighed 96 pounds.
From 225 to 90?
96 pounds. I was so weak I had to roll on my stomach to get up, but I could still walk whenever they walked us to the boat. It was about 3 miles out to the river. And whenever they turned us over to the Chinese, we walked up through this group of prisoners, and there was some Chinese dump truck up there, and some of us that was the weakest, they pulled up in this dump truck, and I couldn't even pull my knees up under me. I was so weak. And they took us down to, they called it the hospital group, but there was some mud huts there.
Yeah.
And they put 4 of us in a room. They kept me there till spring.
In Pyeongdong, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And whenever we got there that first evening, they put a bucket of rice in the room with 4 of us, about that big, and we ate that whole bucket of rice. And then they give us next day, they give us a new cotton padded uniform and a cotton padded hat and tennis shoes.
Do you know why did they change the situation for you guys?
No.
Bring you out of the Apex and put it into the Camp 5?
Well,
Because the peace talk has been started.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, so that the Chinese wanted to show
Oh.
the Red Cross or whatever
Oh, yeah.
that we are treating POW better.
Well, we did get better. We got enough to eat, and we had warm clothes and a comfort. And we finally got a bath.
In Yalu River, right?
No, they had a bathhouse there
Oh, really?
in that little village, and we got one bath there. And then in the spring, while we went in the Yellow River, we bathed in there.
So during the winter, you actually had a kind of bathing house there?
Well, there was one time.
One time.
It was in a hut too. I mean, it was closed it was hot water and a tub about maybe a 8 by 8 or 6 by 6, something like that. And that was our first bath in a year and a half.
when did your family know that you were in the camp?
And about January of '52, I think the Chinese turned our names over that we were prisoners.
Mm-hmm. So, did you receive any letter from you?
Yes, we were able to receive, I don't know, maybe one or two a month or something like that.
Oh, that's not too bad.
No, it wasn't. At least they knew we was alive.
Uh-huh. Do you remember the contents of the letter that you received from your parents?
Well, we got to write a letter first, I guess.
Yeah.
And I just told them, I just wanted them to know I was alive, so I said we would get good treatment and all that. And so,
To pass the investigation.
right.
Yeah.
So I don't have any, I can't remember what.
Got it. What was the most difficult thing in the camp? Throughout the APEC and Camp 5, what was the most difficult thing to you?
The death march.
Why?
Well, you was forced to either march, and you was freezing, you was hungry. I know sometimes when they'd be ready to move out in the morning, they had the like corn balls made up, and the tiger moved us out sometimes where we didn't even get a ball, so we'd go all day without anything to eat or drink. And then that evening you'd maybe get a ball of rice or millet or corn. But, you know, you're just sleeping out on the ground. Sometimes the next one would be froze to death. They just laying next to you. I know one of my buddies, we was laying, sleeping out on the ground, and it was a little snow on the ground, and of course we was all crammed together, and he had dysentery, so he had to go to the banjo or the Pinto, yeah. And anyway, he filled his pants before he got there. So he said he just sat down and cried because he knew whenever he went to crawl back in, they'd push him out. But he just took snow and cleaned his pants out the best he could, and then he crawled back up and in between the other guys, and they didn't push him out. I mean, everybody was the same.
You believe in God, and why do you think that this unbelievable thing is happening to you?
Well, God himself suffered. I mean, he died on the cross, or Jesus did on the cross, and so people's got to suffer as well. I mean, that was an example of what we had to do, I guess.
That's how you put it into perspective?
Yes. No, I'm thankful for being a part of it. I really am proud that I got to be a part of the Korean War.
So when were you released?
August the 25th, 1953. They had us in these little ambulance-like trucks, and when we got over to the Freedom Village there, why they put a step down and you left out, and here's an officer, an MP, or somebody come and escorted each one back to a tent where they, well, first of all, I guess the chaplain was the one that talked to us, and then I think they give us an ice cream cone, and then they took us down through this tent. It had and we stripped off everything and got some toilet articles, and we went in and we was deliced and then took a shower, some new clothes for us to put on.
What were you thinking at the time?
I was just happy.
Have you ever thought that you're going to survive it?
No.
No?
No, well, you just live the day at a time. And I didn't know that they exchanged prisoners of war. Well, they didn't intend to, did they? I mean, that was a part of the negotiation for exchange prisoners of war. But I didn't. I just thought, well, we just live until we die. We take a day at a time. But,
one step at a time.
Yeah. I know you used to see the moon coming up, and you think about all your free buddies and stuff back home partying, and they get enough to eat. But yeah. But like I said, I'm thankful that I got to be a part of it. It's a part of our freedom and your freedom.
What is Korea to you?
Well, I'm thankful that I got to be a part of it, so I appreciate it, and I appreciate what the Korean people are doing.
Have you been back to Korea?
No.
Do you know what happened to Korea?
Yes, yes.
What is
I mean, it's rebuilt,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
How do you know?
Well, on TV, and then they had the Olympics over there,
Uh-huh.
and so yeah, it's. I don't know how much. I know exactly where I was at when I got captured, and I think I could find it, or whenever I got wounded. And if I was over there today, I believe I could walk right to it. But
Are you proud of what Korea has accomplished?
I am, yes. I'm really very proud of it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.